Before we begin, take a second to subscribe to the channel and become part of our growing community. Here, we share powerful true life stories filled with heartbreak, resilience, difficult choices, and unexpected turning points. If stories that make you feel, think, and reflect are your thing, you're in the right place. Now settle in, because today's story changed one woman's life forever. Have you ever experienced a moment when everything seemed to split into two separate timelines? A moment so small on the surface, yet so enormous underneath, that you later realize your entire future began there? For some people, it's a phone call. For others, it's a text message. For me, it was a knock. Not a loud knock. Not the kind that makes you jump. Just 3 soft taps against an apartment door. Quiet. Polite. Almost hesitant. The kind of knock you could easily ignore. But sometimes the softest sounds create the biggest storms. Looking back now, I wish I had ignored it. I wish I had stayed on the couch and pretended nobody was home. I wish I had trusted the uncomfortable feeling twisting inside my stomach. But life doesn't give us the luxury of seeing consequences before choices. At the time, it seemed harmless. A routine visit. Nothing more. At least that's what I told myself. The truth is, my life was already falling apart long before that knock arrived. That knock didn't start the disaster. It simply revealed how close I already was to the edge. My name is Nina. I'm 27 years old. And during the months leading up to that day, I felt older than I had ever felt in my entire life. Not physically, emotionally, mentally. The kind of tired that settles deep inside your bones. The kind of exhaustion sleep can't fix. Every morning I woke up feeling like I had spent the entire night carrying a weight nobody else could see. I lived alone in a small 1-bedroom apartment on the top floor of an aging building. Years ago, the place had been full of families. Children used to run through the hallways. Neighbors used to gather outside during summer evenings. At least that's what older tenants told me. Now the building felt different. Empty. Quiet. Forgotten. Most residents kept to themselves. People came and went without learning each other's names. Doors stayed closed. Conversations stayed short. Everyone seemed to be carrying struggles they didn't want anyone else to see. I fit right in. When I first moved there after college, I had imagined it would be temporary. Just a stepping stone. A place to stay while building my career. I thought within a few years I'd move somewhere nicer. Somewhere brighter. Somewhere that felt more like success. Instead, I stayed. And eventually, the apartment became a reflection of my life. Stuck between where I was and where I wanted to be. For a while, things had actually been going well. I had a marketing job downtown. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that would impress strangers at parties. But it paid the bills. It gave me purpose. It made me feel like I was moving forward. Then came the layoffs. One email. A few paragraphs. A polite apology. And suddenly everything changed. I still remember staring at the screen, reading the same sentences over and over. We regret to inform you. Funny how a handful of words can erase years of plans. At first I stayed optimistic. Everyone told me I'd find something else quickly. You're talented. You're smart. You'll land on your feet. Those were the phrases people used. And for a while I believed them. The first week I updated my resume. The second week I sent applications everywhere. The third week I started checking job boards every few hours. By the second month, hope began turning into anxiety. By the third month, anxiety had become panic. Every rejection felt personal. Every unanswered application felt like confirmation that maybe I wasn't as qualified as I thought. The savings account I'd spent years building started shrinking. Rent was due. Bills were due. Everything was due. Except opportunities. Those never seemed to arrive. Soon my daily routine became painfully predictable. Wake up. Check emails. Apply for jobs. Wait. Refresh. Wait again. Repeat. Days blurred together. Weeks disappeared. Sometimes I'd realize an entire afternoon had passed without speaking a single word. Silence became my most consistent companion. The refrigerator slowly emptied. The pantry shelves looked bare. I started stretching groceries further than they were meant to go. Skipping meals became normal. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. Meanwhile, my phone never stopped buzzing. Unknown numbers, collection agencies, payment reminders, automated messages. Every notification felt like another reminder that I was losing control. Eventually I stopped answering. Then I stopped checking. Then I started leaving my phone on silent. Not for peace. For avoidance. There's a difference. Real peace feels calming. Avoidance feels like hiding underwater and hoping nobody notices you're running out of air. The hardest part wasn't the money. It was the shame. People rarely talk about that part. They talk about unemployment. They talk about debt. They talk about financial stress. But nobody talks enough about the embarrassment. The feeling that you've somehow become less valuable. The feeling that every conversation might reveal how badly you're struggling. I became an expert at pretending. I smiled during video calls with family. I laughed at jokes. I told everyone I was doing fine. Inside, I was terrified. Every day felt like a performance. And I was getting tired of acting. Then came the rent notice. A simple piece of paper slipped under my door. Nothing threatening. Nothing dramatic. Just a reminder. But I stared at it for nearly an hour. Because I knew what it represented. I didn't have the money. Not this time. Not anymore. I had run out of solutions. And that's when I started noticing him more. Mr. Clay. The building owner. He was the kind of man people paid attention to the moment he entered a room. Confident. Polished. Always perfectly dressed. His shirts looked freshly pressed. His shoes always shined. His appearance suggested someone who had everything under control. The complete opposite of me. Whenever he walked through the building, people straightened up without realizing it. He carried himself with certainty, like someone accustomed to getting answers. Like someone who rarely heard the word no. At first, our interactions were ordinary. Rent receipts. Maintenance announcements. Brief conversations in the hallway. Nothing unusual. But over time, I began noticing things. The way he studied people. The way he seemed to remember details others forgot. The way he always appeared to know more than he should. His smile never fully reached his eyes. That was what unsettled me most. The smile looked convincing. But something behind it felt distant. Calculated. Like every expression had been carefully selected. Whenever he spoke to me, he was polite. Almost too polite. He'd ask how I was doing. Mention that he hoped my job search was going well. Offer help in ways that sounded generous on the surface. Yet somehow left me uncomfortable afterward. I couldn't explain it. Not then. Maybe because nothing he did crossed a clear line. It was all subtle. Small things. Moments easy to dismiss. Easy to rationalize. Easy to ignore. And when you're overwhelmed by survival, ignoring things becomes second nature. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop questioning uncomfortable feelings. You focus on making it through the next day. That's exactly where I was. Surviving. Not living. Just surviving. Then one late afternoon, a shadow stretched across my living room and another unsuccessful day faded toward evening. I heard it. 3 gentle knocks. Top. 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 I froze. Something about the sound immediately felt different. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just certain. Like whoever stood outside already expected the door to open. And in that moment, without realizing it, my life began moving toward a chapter one never imagined I would live through. A chapter that started with a simple knock. And ended with choices I once swore I would never make. For several seconds, I simply stared at the door. The television continued playing quietly in the background, but I wasn't paying attention anymore. All my focus had shifted to those 3 knocks. Something inside me whispered not to answer. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Whatever it was, it made my hand hesitate before reaching for the doorknob. I walked slowly across the apartment. Each step felt strangely heavy. The closer I got to the door, the more unsettled I became. When I finally looked through the peephole, my stomach tightened immediately. Mr. Clay stood outside. Behind him were 2 men I didn't recognize. One carried a toolbox. The other stood with his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. All 3 appeared relaxed. Comfortable. As if they belonged there. as if showing up unannounced at someone's apartment was completely normal. For a brief moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. I could stay silent, wait for them to leave, avoid the entire situation. But then I remembered the television, the lights, the fact that my car was parked outside. They probably already knew I was there. So after a long breath, I unlocked the door. The moment it opened, Mr. Clay smiled. "Sorry to bother you, Nina," he said warmly. "We're checking on a possible leak from one of the units upstairs." His explanation sounded reasonable, at least on the surface. Yet something still felt off. I couldn't explain why. The words made sense. The situation didn't. The two men behind him didn't look like maintenance workers. They looked more like friends who had tagged along. Neither appeared interested in pipes. Neither seemed concerned about repairs. Instead, they were studying the apartment. Studying me. The feeling made my skin prickle. Still, I stepped aside. That was the problem with being overwhelmed. You stop challenging situations. You stop asking difficult questions. You start choosing whichever option seems least likely to create conflict. Conflict requires energy. And I had none left. The three men entered. Mr. Clay walked in first. The others followed. Immediately they began moving around the apartment. Opening doors. Looking at ceilings. Checking sinks. At least pretending to. The entire thing felt rehearsed. Like actors performing a scene they'd practiced before arriving. I stood awkwardly near the kitchen counter while they wandered through my home. Then something unexpected happened. The taller man suddenly stopped. He looked directly at me. His eyes narrowed slightly. Recognition flashed across his face. "Wait a second," he said. He pointed toward me. "Do I know you from somewhere?" I forced a polite smile. The kind people wear when they don't want a conversation, but know they're about to have one anyway. "I'm not sure." He stared another moment. Then his expression brightened. "Marketing company downtown?" I blinked. "Milan Marketing?" I nodded slowly. His face lit up. "That's it." He laughed. "You worked on the social media team." I remembered him vaguely. Not a coworker. A client. Someone who had attended meetings a few years earlier. The memory came back in fragments. Conference rooms. Presentations. Coffee cups. Professional conversations. A completely different version of my life. "Wow," he said. "I figured you'd be running the place by now." I laughed politely. But the comment landed harder than he realized. Because I had once imagined the same thing. I had imagined promotions. Raises. Career growth. Success. Instead, I was standing in a messy apartment wondering how long I could survive without another paycheck. His words weren't cruel. But they reminded me of everything I had lost. For a moment, embarrassment washed over me. I hated how exposed I felt. I hated that strangers could look around my apartment and see evidence of my struggle. The nearly empty shelves. The aging furniture. The tension in my voice. It felt as though pieces of my private failures were suddenly on display. Mr. Clay watched the exchange quietly. He didn't say anything. But I noticed the way his eyes lingered on me. Observing. Processing. Remembering. As if he were collecting information and storing it away for later. The inspection continued. Or at least the performance of one. The men moved through rooms. Ran water. Tapped walls. Opened cabinets. Nothing about it felt genuine. The longer it continued, the more uncomfortable I became. Then one of them walked into the kitchen. Without asking permission, he opened my refrigerator. I stared in disbelief. He looked inside for several seconds.